Hey everyone, welcome to Throwback Gaming, where we take a new look at older video games. You might be looking at the title of this video and thinking, what the heck dude? This so-called challenge is a solo run using a Steel Psychic Mythic Pokemon with fantastic healing moves and stats. Like, what kind of challenge even is this? And I get it. Of all the Pokemon for me to do a solo run with, I obviously could do a lot worse than Jirachi. The reason this idea even interested me is that, unlike other solo runs using a legendary or mythical Pokemon, you don't have to use glitches or mods to do this one. You can do this challenge entirely using authentic Nintendo hardware, if you know what to look for. See, my favorite Pokemon game of all time is actually Pokemon Colosseum for the Nintendo GameCube. And, as some of you may know, there's also a Pokemon Colosseum bonus disc, which, among other things, can deposit a level 5 Jirachi into your version of Pokemon Ruby or Sapphire. Meaning that if you have a GameCube with a Pokemon Colosseum bonus disc, and a Game Boy with a hard copy of Pokemon Ruby or Sapphire, and a link cable to connect them, and a Game Boy player installed into your GameCube so you can record the whole thing. You know, I think this says a lot about what I choose to spend my money on more than anything else. Regardless, if you have all this stuff, and I do, you can completely legitimately go on a journey through Hoenn with a Jirachi. So that's what I did. And I'll tell you right now, this challenge is not as straightforward as you might think it is. I've actually tried it a couple times before and never finished it due to some complications that came up during the challenge. We'll see them as we go. But I wanted to give it one more try, and I ended up having some fun with it. So I really hope you enjoy it too. Now, you can't actually get a Jirachi until you have the Pokédex, which is after the first rival fight in this game. So I do have to go through the beginning of it with my starter Pokemon. I choose Mudkip because famously Mudkip can learn all the HMs that are needed for traveling the Hoenn region. Normally you think that Mudkip would be the best choice to give to my rival because Swampert is the hardest one for Jirachi to deal with, but unlike in most other Pokemon games, there's not many rival fights, and the rival never fully evolves their starter Pokemon. So there's really no challenge for these, so I just go with Mudkip so I won't have to catch any more Pokemon. I name him HM Slave because that's what he'll be used for. And after defeating May, I get the Pokédex, which means I can get Jirachi. And the possible issues actually begin with Jirachi's stats. While Jirachi has very high base stats, there's a factor of randomness attached to its stats due to its IVs and its nature, and there's a couple of breaking points in the early to mid game where these can actually matter quite a bit. At minimum, I need at least decent IVs in HP and special defense to make this challenge playable. It'd also help if I got a plus special attack nature, though that's not required. My Jirachi ends up having near perfect IVs in HP and special defense, and a plus special defense nature, so that's really solid. I did start a new game in hopes of getting a plus special attack nature, but realized very quickly that I'd be lucky to get a Jirachi that good again, so I reloaded my old save and went with that one. And I'm glad that I did, because while I don't have a plus special attack nature, I do also have a near perfect special attack IV, and all of this will matter later by the way. So now that I have my Jirachi, I put Mudkip in the box and start clearing through trainers on routes 102 and 104. You'll notice that I'm gaining boosted EXP here. This is because Jirachi is coded as not being my Pokemon originally. Its original trainer is marked as someone called Wishmaker. This means Jirachi follows all the same rules as a Pokemon that I got from a trade, including boosted EXP. So I'm able to level up fairly quickly by fighting trainers, but I'm careful to avoid this one because he has a Poochyena. As a Dark type, Poochyena is immune to my current only attacking move, so that would have been a problem to fight. Now there is a required battle against a Team Magma Grunt in Petalburg Woods who also has a Poochyena, but the last trainer before that fight gives me just enough EXP to reach level 10, where I learn Swift, a normal type move. Honestly, before this challenge I never thought I'd have a situation where Swift of all things was a vital and important move, but here we are. Anyway, with Team Magma out of the way for now, I head towards Rustboro City. And it's here where I encounter the actual issue with using a traded Jirachi. Since we have no gym badges, Jirachi will occasionally disobey my orders starting at level 11. This could mean doing nothing at all, or it could mean using a random move. And this will continue until I get the second gym badge, which will guarantee obedience for my Pokemon until they're past level 30. This will also matter later. For now, the first gym leader Roxanne is still quite doable since we resist all of her moves. Brawly is a bit more of an issue since his fighting type moves do neutral damage and can be scary after a few bulk ups, which he could very easily set up if I get bad obedience luck, so this could be a problem. I'm also so determined to get rid of this whole disobedience curse that I go into his gym a bit under level, which with hindsight was a terrible idea, as you'll soon see. It's also during this battle that I learned that disobedience can sometimes cause Jirachi to just go to sleep for no reason, since that happens to me on turn 1. So Matchup gets off 2 bulk ups, which could have been really scary if he'd been able to get an attack off. Thankfully we wake up and land a Confusion, which doesn't KO Matchup, but does cause confusion, so he takes himself out. That brings in Makuhita. He's able to get up a bulk up against my impertinent Jirachi, but then we get another Confusion on Makuhita, and then he KOs himself in Confusion. We do have the ability Serene Grace, which makes random status conditions more likely to happen, but this was still really lucky, and I really should have gone to this gym at a higher level to be able to guarantee one-shots. Even slightly worse disobedience luck could have made this really scary. By the way, the disobedience thing is also why I really can't do this challenge in Emerald, because in Emerald, Brawly has a meta type, which takes neutral damage to my Confusion. It also has a light screen and focus punch, so yeah, this battle in Emerald would have been nearly impossible, and I'm really glad I'm doing it in Ruby instead. Anyway, we go deliver the letter to Steven Stone and then make our way to Slateport. I'm careful to avoid fighting trainers on the beach and instead level up my Jirachi by battling Team Makba in Slateport and against trainers on Route 110. The EXP from doing this lets Jirachi learn Psychic right before the next rival fight, which is the main reason that I really wasn't worried about the rival fights in this game. Psychic at level 20 off of Jirachi's stats is just stupidly powerful. After battling the rest of the trainers on the way to Mauville and trouncing Wally, it's time for Watson. His electric Pokemon are another potential problem since we don't resist their moves either, but unlike with Brawly, we don't have a super effective matchup into his team. In fact, his team has 2 Steel types which resist all of my moves. We can't even 2-shot his lead Magnemite unless we have amazing special attack, which is the main reason why I wanted a plus special attack nature, which we don't have. But thanks to my near perfect special attack IV, we actually can 2-shot Magnemite with a high roll, which I do get. It does hit me with Thunder Wave, but the paralysis is cured by a held Cherry Berry, so we're perfectly fine. We outspeed and 1-shot Voltorb with Psychic, which just leaves Magneton, who we obviously don't 2-shot. In fact, we don't even have a 3-shot. This would be fine, except it hits me with a Thunder Wave on turn 1, and Watson has Super Potions. So eventually I get in range to where I need to use Rest to remove the paralysis and avoid dying to potential crits. And while I'm asleep, Magneton confuses me with Supersonic. So, due to some really terrible confusion luck, Jirachi goes down and I lose. Which is really rough. I could just challenge Watson again from a higher level, but I really can't afford the extra EXP from doing that, for reasons I'll explain in just a bit. Thankfully I did save right before going to the gym, so I reload from there and I try again. We lose attempt 2 to bad confusion luck as well. By the way, in case you haven't guessed already, I am banning the use of items in battle, since I feel that would make this challenge unfair to play. Held items are okay, but apart from that I have to use Jirachi's arsenal of self-healing moves to stay alive, which doesn't help much if I keep hitting myself in confusion or getting fully paralyzed. On attempt 3 we get the high roll 2-shot on Magnemite, so we're fully healthy going into Magneton. I go for a Wish with my 1 guaranteed healthy turn, and Magneton paralyzes with Thunder Wave, as I expected. Then I hit a Psychic, and Magneton hits a Shock Wave with the damage it's healed by my Wish. Then Magneton misses a Supersonic as I get fully paralyzed. I guess that's fair. On my next turn, however, I land a Psychic which gets a special defense drop. So 1 more hit takes Magneton down, and I win. That was really lucky. I knew Watson could be a problem with the sheer number of hacks he uses, but I didn't expect to lose to him twice. Now you might be thinking the next gym should be way harder since Flannery uses fire types which we're weak to. And all of her Pokemon have Overheat, the most powerful fire type move, so this should be impossible, right? But the main problem right now is actually EXP management, because if I go past level 30 before getting Flannery's gym badge, Jirachi will start disobeying again, which will make this impossible. This is why I chose to reset my save after losing to Watson to avoid extra EXP, and also partly why I didn't grind more before going into Brawly, because I really didn't want the extra EXP from doing that. Avoiding trainers is also really important here, which I'm normally pretty terrible at, but thankfully I do a pretty good job of it here, to the point where I deliberately do fight some trainers on the way to Mount Chimney just so I'm not under level for the upcoming Maxi fight. During all of this I pick up the TM for Secret Power, which is an incredibly useful move for Jirachi to have. Secret Power has a 30% chance to trigger a secondary effect like flinching, causing status conditions, etc., and that chance is doubled to 60% thanks to my Serene Grace ability. However, I don't teach it to Jirachi just yet, because I really need Shock Wave for the upcoming Maxi fight. Maxi leads with a Mightyena who lowers my attack with Intimidate, and loves to lower my accuracy with Stand Attack. But Shockwave is a special move that cannot miss, so we take Mediana down pretty handily after only one sand attack and some minor damage from Bite. Maxie then sends in Camerupt, who is immune to Shockwave. I hit a Psychic as Camerupt uses Focus Energy. One more hit should take it down, but I miss. Thankfully it doesn't crit with Ember, so we take the KO on the next turn. We also one-shot Golbat with a crit from Shockwave, so Jirachi is on fire today. I'm proud of them. Speaking of being on fire though, it's time for Flannery. We are getting close to level 30, but thankfully I know a path through a gym that avoids all of her gym trainers. I do mess it up immediately and end up resetting my save file, but that was really me being paranoid. The EXP from that fight would not have made a difference to overleveling. Flannery herself is easier than you might think, since in this game she only has 3 Pokemon, 2 of which are Slugmas that go down in one shot. Torkoal obviously does not go down in one shot, but Jirachi's stats are so freaking high that even with OK IVs and HP and Spadef, we can survive one overheat, which is why I said those were needed earlier. Normally we could compensate for bad IVs by overleveling my Pokemon, but I obviously can't do that here with the whole disobedience thing. So what I'm saying is, I'm really glad I got a great Jirachi on my first try. A critical hit from Overheat would naturally still KO me, but Flannery's AI is really weird about using it because Overheat lowers her special attack. So she almost never goes for Overheat unless she sees a KO. Meaning my only lose condition is if she goes for Body Slam, gets a paralysis, and then KOs with Overheat. Thankfully, we have a held Cherry Berry to prevent paralysis, so this battle was basically unlosable. Norman is also really easy because we resist his normal type moves, so while I clear through him and his gym trainers, let's talk about Flannery again. I can see why you might think this was a bit unfair to do in Ruby rather than Emerald, because in Emerald, Flannery has 2 Pokemon that I can't one-shot, a Camerupt and a Torkoal. And while I can tank 1 Overheat, 2 Overheats or a single Sun-boosted Overheat would definitely end my career. And as I said, I can't overlevel to avoid this. There is one solution though. In Pokemon Emerald, there's a move tutor in Slateport City that can teach your Pokemon Swagger. Swagger is a really volatile move that you'll be seeing again later in the playthrough. It raises the target's attack by 2 stages, thereby doubling their attack, but it also confuses them, so they'll do more damage to themselves if they hit themselves in confusion. Obviously that means it can also do more damage to you if they hit you, so it's a pretty high risk, high reward move. But by teaching Jirachi Swagger and then getting good confusion luck against either Camerupt or Torkoal, the fight would be winnable in Emerald. But that obviously requires me to get lucky, which feeds into an issue that I do have with Pokemon solo runs in general. Because I only have 1 Pokemon, I'm limited in terms of what kinds of strategies I can use, and even Jirachi isn't powerful enough to guarantee victories on every challenge that I meet. Meaning I either have to throw myself at the opponent over and over until I get lucky, or overlevel the heck out of my Pokemon. There's really not much more I can do. Speaking of overleveling the heck out of my Pokemon though, now that I have the Heat Badge from Flannery, I have guaranteed obedience until Jirachi goes past level 50. And the next gym battle with Winona will give me the Feather Badge, which gives me guaranteed obedience until level 70. So I'm really not worried about overleveling anymore. In between the rival fight, the Team Magma raid at the Weather Institute, the other random trainers on the way to Fort Tree City, and Winona's own gym trainers, there's a lot of battles leading up to her. I'm not going out of my way to fight every trainer that I meet, but I'm not really trying to avoid battles anymore either. So we come into the gym with a pretty sizable level advantage. Which is good, because otherwise her Dragon Dancing, Earthquaking Altaria could be a huge issue. But it doesn't even go for Dragon Dance, and without Dragon Dance it can't one-shot even with a crit. We outspeed and 2-shot with Psychic, so we're just fine. We also picked up a free Thunderbolt TM from Watson on the way, so we can deal with the rest of her Pokemon pretty easily as well. After this, we go to Lily Cove City and pick up the TM for Rest, which will matter later. We also fight our way up Mount Pyre to get the Shadow Ball TM, which I immediately teach to Jirachi. Mount Pyre also has a free TM from my favorite move, Skull Swap, which doesn't matter for this playthrough, but it would matter if we were doing this challenge in Emerald. In Pokemon Emerald, the next gym battle, Tate and Liza uses 4 Pokemon, one of which is a Claydol, who has a good bulk and typing and can threaten me with Stab's super effective Earthquake, which is a huge problem. But it also has the ability Levitate, which I can steal using Skill Swap and thereby become immune to ground moves. This doesn't make the battle guaranteed because Claydol would then have Serene Grace and Ancient Power for 20% Omniboost, but it does make the battle winnable. There's also a whole bunch of Team Magma stuff on Mount Pyre, so by the time we reach Tate and Liza and get through their gym trainers, we are once again pretty over level. This gym is also a double battle, so I need to bring HM Slave off the bench, and you might be wondering why he's level 11 right now. Funny story really. So while I was doing the whole Mount Pyre thing, I battled a trainer that had a Lairon. I misclicked here and used Psychic instead of Thunderbolt, which would have gotten the one-shot. So instead Lairon survives with a Sliver and used Roar, which forced Jirachi out and brought Mudkip in. I went ahead and used Mud Slap, fully expecting Lairon to just outspeed and one-shot me, but somehow Mudkip goes first, which can only happen if Lairon was using a negative priority move like Roar again. So by the power of dumb AI, Mudkip KOs the much higher level Lairon and gained like 5 levels because of it. But it doesn't matter, he gets one shot immediately as Solrock goes for a Sunny Day. A stun-boosted Flamethrower from Solrock could have been an issue, but we outspeed and two-shot with Shadow Ball, so we're fine. And Lunatone's only attacking move is Psychic, which we quad resist, so yeah, this was basically unlosable. The rematch with Maxie is pretty easy because his camera goes for Amnesia on turn 1 instead of Earthquake. The same goes for Wallace's Whiscash, which is the only Pokemon on his team that's not weak to Thunderbolt. So before too long, we're at the Elite Four. I actually do get lost on the way trying to get through Victory Road, and I find the TM for Psychic, which believe it or not will matter later. We're also no longer massively over-leveled, which could be an issue because the first 2 battles of this Elite Four are actually a problem. For starters, Sydney uses all Dark-type Pokemon, who are obviously immune to Psychic. In fact, 2 of his Pokemon are dual Grass Dark-type, who resist all of my moves. I could set up with Calm Mind, which we got as a TM from Tate and Liza, but Sydney's Pokemon have a bunch of ways to either inflict statuses or lower my accuracy, so setting up is not actually safe here. Instead, I find a tentative solution in Aerial Ace, which Jirachi can learn for some reason. Even after an Intimidate, we can two-shot his Cacturne with Aerial Ace and do good damage to Shiftry. Cacturne does land a Cotton Spore on its first turn out though, so on the next turn it outspeeds us, but it just goes for Feint Attack, so we're fine. Sharpedo is next, but it just misses a Swagger and then goes down to Thunderbolt. And his next Pokemon, Absol, can't really do much to us either. Shiftry is last. It goes for Double Team on turn 1, which achieves nothing because Aerial Ace cannot miss, but it is bulky enough to survive 2 of them. On the next turn though, it goes for a Swagger, which boosts my attack, and then the confusion is cured by a held Person Berry. So our boosted Aerial Ace takes down Shiftry. That went pretty much perfectly. But we're not safe yet because next up is Phoebe, and her lead Dusclops knows Curse. When used by a Ghost-type Pokemon, Curse sacrifices half of the user's HP to inflict, well, a Curse, which removes 1/4 of my HP on each turn. And because I can't one-shot her Pokemon, it gets off a Curse, and we can't outstall all the damage that we take. So we lose. And honestly, I'm kinda pressed on what to do here. I could just level grind till I'm strong enough to one-shot Dusclops with Shadow Ball, or fish for a turn 1 crit. But neither option sounds all that fun to me. Thing is, I'm pretty sure Dusclops will always go for turn 1 Curse because with me only having 1 Pokemon, it's the most optimal move. I decided to make 2 more attempts at Phoebe to make sure that is how her AI works, but on my next attempt I actually lose to Sydney. His Cacturne goes for Cotton Spore again on turn 1, but this time on turn 2 it uses Leech Seed, which saps my HP every turn. Not nearly as much as Curse does, but I stupidly didn't teach Jirachi Rest for this battle, so I lose. I get through him on my next attempt, but then I lose again to Phoebe thanks to a turn 1 Curse. So I go in for one final try, and her Dusclops goes for Shadow Punch on turn 1 for some reason. I have no idea why, but it means we get through a lead without being cursed, which is great. Even so though, we do almost lose. We miss the 2-shot range on our other Dusclops and get confused by Confuse Ray, and then get hit by an Earthquake as we hit ourselves in confusion. So this could be really bad if we hit ourselves again, but thankfully we don't, and we're able to get off a rest against her Bannet, which is her least threatening Pokemon by far. So with some more rest stalling, we're able to set up some Calm Minds and then sweep through the rest of Phoebe's team. And from there, the game is basically over. Now that we're past Phoebe, we can teach Jirachi Psychic instead of Shadow Ball using the TM that we picked up in Victory Road, and since Glacia's lead Pokemon can't threaten us very much, we can very safely set up a Calm Mind sweep. Drake's lead Pokemon can lower our speed with Rock Tomb, but thanks to the Calm Mind boost, most of his Pokemon can't do much damage to me unless they get a critical hit, which they do not. One of his Flygons does have Dig, a super effective physical move, but for some reason it goes for a Sandstorm on turn 1, which is extra dumb because Jirachi is a Steel type and therefore takes no passive damage from Sandstorm. So that just leaves Steven, whose lead Skarmory can also not threaten Jirachi very much, so we set up 6 Calm Minds and then sweep through his entire team with a combination of Psychic and Thunderbolt. And with that, my little wishing star of Doom and I have become champions of the Hoenn League. I will reiterate that I'm not a huge solo run person, but this was still really fun. And I do appreciate the fact that Nintendo did create a way to go on a journey through Hoenn with my favorite mythical Pokemon. There were some fights that were more RNG heavy than I had planned on them being. I definitely didn't think that Phoebe of all people could be what almost ended the whole run, but I did enjoy this. I likely won't do another solo run on the channel because it's really not my preferred way to play, but I do have a lot of Pokemon content planned, so please do consider subscribing to the channel if you want to see all of that as it comes out. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching this, and I'll see you next time. Until then, have a good one.